Variety Pack Podcast. Hello and welcome to the Variety Pack Podcast. My name is Chloe Baldwin. I use all pronouns, and I am your host as we have incredible conversations with live entertainers about how to harness the attention of today's audiences. My guests today are two multi-hyphenate magicians that I am so excited for you to hear our conversation. Our first guest is Erik Tait, who is the host of the Penguin Magic podcast and one of the creative minds behind Penguin Magic. He was also the winner of FISM in 2022. He's been seen on Penn & Teller's Fool Us, and, as his Instagram bio so correctly says, an American hero. Our second guest is Andi Gladwin, who is one of the founders of Vanishing Inc. He's also an incredible magician in his own right. He has also been on Penn & Teller's Fool Us, ITV's Next Great Magician, and is a season regular on the CW channel's Masters of Illusion. I was so happy to get to sit down and have a conversation with both of them at the same time to talk about everything from dealers' rooms to what inspires their own magic. Welcome to the Variety Pack Podcast, made possible by Mystify Magic Festival. I am so excited today to have two incredible magicians and folks in the magic industry with me, Andi Gladwin and Erik Tait. Welcome to the podcast.
Hello.
Hello. So glad to be here. These are two of my favorite people. So this is going to be really fun.
I'm looking
so
forward.
Glad to have you guys. Yes, I'm so glad. So I'm just going to kind of dive right in, and I'm going to start with something that I find very delightful about both of your magic whenever I've seen it. I love how much you both lean into comedy. And I was wondering, at what point did you realize that humor for you wasn't just like a tool or an aspect of your magic or an aspect of who you are as performers, but part of your identity as how you approach any type of performance, other than being hilarious, which is already obvious?
Well, we have very different answers to that. And I know because I know Erik's background. So Erik, you should go first on this.
I mean, I have a degree in comedy. So it's sort of like, if I don't use it, then my parents will be very disappointed. I did a lot of stand-up in improv in high school. I was doing a lot more stand-up before I was doing magic. And I still, even like as recently as a few years ago, was doing a lot of sketch comedy. So it's sort of always been something that I've been doing. And I've never been very good at like serious magic. I tried to do like serious woo-woo mentalism once, and it did not go well. So it's just kind of.
I love that you tried it.
Yeah, it's.
Oh, so sorry. What I was going to ask, so you kind of came to comedy first before you found magic. How did magic kind of come into your world since you started in comedy?
So I had a magic kit as a kid, but then and like did magic kind of off and on, and the World's Greatest Magic specials were huge when I was in middle school and high school. I mean, it was a cultural touchstone for us. Like in Thanksgiving, we didn't have TiVo. Like no one had to be able to record, so you would sit down and watch that. And then I was a juggler for a long time, and I got a gig in a theater called the Comedy Barn, and the owner said, well, you're a juggler, you must know magic, go sell magic in our magic shop. So I sort of became a pitch guy at the same time I became a professional magician and interested in magic, and learned like my first couple of card moves from a ventriloquist, which is why I do them weird, I guess. So it was a very like otter baby into the river, learn to swim all at once.
Absolutely. I love thinking about that now and what you do with Penguin, and that part of you learning this craft was also you learning how to put it out there in the world and sell it. That's fascinating.
Right. Yeah, it was wild.
Cool. Andi, what about you? What was your kind of approach to comedy and all of this?
So whereas Erik went to study comedy, I learned very much from the School of Hard Knocks, and there were many, many knocks along the way. And for me, it all started with a conversation with my friend Danny Buckler, who is the funniest human alive. He's a stand-up comedian in the UK, a cult classic kind of stand-up comedian. And he said to me something that was both the nicest thing anyone's ever said and the worst thing anyone's ever said, which is, you are one of my funniest friends until you get on stage. And I was like, what do you mean by that? And actually, he was exactly right. And so for me, I believe I am at times quite funny in normal life, but I used to be kind of quite straight on stage and not really kind of rigid and not moving well and saying funny things. And so it just came from the decision that I have to work on this. This is a craft that I need to invest as much time as I invest my magic in. And just like I study magic books and study with magicians, I now study joke writing books and stand-up comedy books, and I study with comedians for that exact reason. Because to me, it doesn't come naturally on stage, and I have to work on it.
What
That's
a
so cool to
horrifying
hear.
thing to have someone say to you.
But you know what? There are performers I see on stage, and I think, you don't have good friends because somebody, one of your good friends should have told you something about whatever the problem is. And I'm so lucky to have good friends that know that I want to hear that information. So yeah, it was horrifying, but also amazing. Like Danny changed my life and my performance through that one sarcastic comment, as all good Brits do.
You know, the main reason that I'm doing magic now and not focused on comedy was I came home from a gig one night at a comedy club, and I was pretty upset because I couldn't get anything going with the club. And my ex-wife said, you know, as a comedian, you're funny, but you're kind of just another white guy. Have you ever thought about focusing on magic? And like a year later, I won a bunch of awards and had products and stuff. So I do feel your pain, Andy.
Thank you. I've won no awards.
I'm sure we can buy you a Merlin.
Yeah, we could totally get you on.
I can't afford it. It's too much.
Everyone, link in bio. We're gonna GoFundMe to get you a Merlin.
Would that not be the best thing to GoFundMe for a Merlin? I kind of want to do that now. That's very funny.
Honestly, that's great. That's the project for this year. Great. Oh my God. So I love that kind of both of you had these moments of somebody being a little bit hurtfully honest. It also makes me think about how comedy so often comes from a place of authenticity. Like I feel like some of the best jokes that I've written have always come from me being really honest with myself. And I often also will always look at very traumatizing situations and go, that's so funny. What kind of inspiration do you guys find from your own lives? And like, how has, and if it hasn't, then I'd love to hear about that too. How has kind of finding your own authentic voice in your art either aided or at times hindered how you create and what you bring to the stage?
I read this comedy writing book once that taught you how to write jokes about anything. So the exercise I used to do is I would open up a newspaper and then write jokes about the headlines. And I realized I don't want to write jokes about anything. I want to write jokes about me. So my show is basically, here's a load of anecdotes of how I was an idiot or how somebody was an idiot to me. That's basically the theme of the whole thing. And that's, to me, was way harder. Like, yeah, it's easy just to write jokes and write comedy if we can reach out to anything in the world. But when you actually need to start getting specific about yourself, that's where I really struggled. But for me, that's the work that's worth doing, is making it about you, finding your own personality and finding your own voice in your jokes and your presentations.
Yeah.
That going to the newspaper and writing jokes, though, is a really valuable technique. One of the things we had to do in school was get a newspaper every day, write 5 jokes from the headlines, 5 jokes from the interior, 5 jokes from the sport, 5 jokes from the entertainment. They didn't have to be good. It was just like learning to write in that. And the jokes could be for like a weekend update or a late night monologue or a stand-up thing, but it was very valuable in learning to write. These days, I find that most of my comedy, or the things that I'm infusing in my magic as far as humor, comes from like my enthusiasms. Like I think that to be a well-rounded magician, you need to be a well-rounded person. So like I've got a full-on like Cards Across and Oil and Water thing that is entirely based around internet conspiracy theories and a deep explanation of the Mandela effect. Because I'm just like I love the fact that people don't, like, there are people who think that Finland is a myth. It's like a conspiracy created by Russia and Japan to like preserve fishing. Well, I go really deep on that stuff, and it's super fun. And so anything that I'm finding I love in my real life comes into magic. Like I love robot combat. There's a robot behind me that I'm building to smash into other things. And that led me into learning to 3D print and design things for 3D printing. And then that has like affected stuff that I've developed for my show. So it's more about like really enjoying something and then bringing it into the magic, whatever that is. Like my chop cup routine revolves entirely around Schrödinger's cat, just because I love the idea that as we're playing with whether or not the ball is in the cup or the pocket, you can introduce this physics thought experiment to people. And I think it also comes from like coming from a long line of teachers, and I like sharing new facts and new things. And so if I can use that to like talk about, I don't know, some dumb animal fact or whatever, then it's really just comes from like the things that I love and I'm deeply fascinated by.
Yeah, absolutely. Kind of following that interest. How does that resonate for you, Andy?
It's just made me think I need to spend even longer on TikTok to find all of these facts and conspiracies. So thanks, Eric. I wasted some time. No, I think that's perfect. What a great way of saying it. Yeah, it's just there is funny in everything, right? But with me, I wanted to find funny in the specific parts, and that's what I found harder. But yeah, Eric has so many of these great presentations. The duck is my favorite, and it's so cool to see you work on that.
You see it in Andy's too. Like Andy's programming background is a perfect example of that magic square thing that you did in Atlanta that I fell in love with.
Well, here's the funny thing with that. So I have a load of jokes about I used to be a computer programmer. I have a whole bunch of like quick one-liners about web browsers. And they are the kind of thing that obviously it's not only me that could do those jokes, but it's a combination of a lot of my backgrounds merged into one. And I released this trick, I think probably 12, 13 years ago. And I say on the explanation DVD back then that you shouldn't do these jokes. They're there, but you shouldn't do them because they are jokes about me. And when I released it, I must have got 50 emails from people saying, well, I'm doing those jokes because my dad works in a bank, and that also applies. Like, no, don't find yourself in the joke. Don't like try and fit the joke to you. I don't even know the right way of saying that. But yeah, don't try and fit yourself into the joke. That's what I mean. Instead, you have to write jokes that fit to you. Now, I feel like an absolute imposter in this conversation because I don't think I'm like, we're talking a lot about joke writing. I don't think I'm like a natural comedian or anything. In fact, one of my life goals is to do pure stand-up, but I think I'm a long way off from it. So please, everybody take what I'm saying with a pinch of salt. These guys are the funny ones.
I don't know, Andy. I've seen you do a lot of things. Even just like you being stuck in a gigantic red balloon, like that does a lot. Like you have, and I think one of the things that I love about what you're saying too is like, I feel like a lot of people think, and people think this most about singers, but I think people often think this about comedy too, that it's just like an innate talent that somebody has and is born with. And I think that sometimes there's like a some sort of inclination, but I think at the same time with anything, it's all just about the time you put in the same way that when you guys are working on tricks, it takes so long to get it to look so natural. And like, I think you put in your 10,000 hours, more than far more than that. I have a question for both of you guys that I've been really excited to ask you that kind of pertains to what we're talking about. Talk to me about what it means to make a trick yours, because both of you work in magic publishing and see all of these tricks get used by various people. You put these tricks out into the world in a way that, maybe people are able to make their own, but and also coming at it from your own magician perspective too, of, how do you know when a trick is yours? I know that in the circus world, there's a phrase of, if you got it, you earned it. If you can do it, it's essentially, if you can do it, then you've earned it. And I noticed that there's maybe a little bit more nuance to it when it comes to magic. I'm also not from the circus world. I just dip my toe in all of these places. But I'd love to hear you guys' perspectives on that.
I think it really depends on what you mean in making the trick yours and making it in general. Because it depends, like if I'm working on a trick for my show, like for me, it's got to fit like a couple of criteria. Like I have to find the trick deeply interesting, because there's a lot of magic that I'm just not, like I can do it, but I'm not interested in it for whatever reason. Like I hate rope magic. It all looks like a puzzle to me. It just looks like somebody presenting a puzzle. Whereas there's certain card tricks that I'm not interested in, others that I am deeply interested in. So it has to be something that's very interesting to me, and then I have to be able to like relate it to a premise that I'm fascinated by. So if I can get those two things together, then we start talking about like coming up with the method and getting the method to where I like it, because I may like the trick but not like the method, and want to have it like fit my hands and the geometry of my body. Whereas like setting up a trick for like putting it out, I'm more thinking about the customer experience, and I'm pretty focused on like your first contact with the trick. You may not be a magician. Like if you're looking at a video of me teaching, this may be your very first magic trick ever. And so it's not just introducing you to the trick, but it's also making sure that you have fun experiencing the trick, have fun learning the trick, feel very satisfied with it, because magic can be a disappointing experience to learn if you're not super into it. Like once it's that whole we guard a empty vault, you know, all that stuff where like when you find out the secret, it's disappointing. You sort of have to learn like what is a pleasing secret for you. And so it's translating that experience for other people and giving them a framework to live inside.
It's beautiful.
For me, I will stick with the theme of friends telling me things that kind of hurt that were true. And over the years, I've had two friends say that Vanishing Inc has ruined me as a performer. I'm paraphrasing, and I won't name their names because that is quite a mean thing to say and take on board. But I understand what they mean, because when you release a trick, the important thing is that you can make it as catch-all as you can. The viewer of a magic trailer needs to see themselves performing that trick, else it's not an effective magic trailer. And so I went through a period where a lot of the tricks I performed were actually quite generic. And a lot of the tricks I created were created with that accidental mindset in place. And so I had to give myself a reset. And I think back, the show I'm doing right now, in the exact theater I'm in, I did 16 years ago. And so I'm in like a really retrospective mood at the moment, because I'm now comparing what I was like then to now. And I think I've gone through this process of taking these catch-all tricks and now getting back on the other side to actually putting myself into the tricks, to the point now where pretty much every trick in my set could not be released to the magic market because it is just too ingrained in me. And actually, that's a point of pride for me. There are many great tricks available. There is only one Andi Gladwin, and so I'm going to try and keep it that way. And no longer do I focus on how can we make this trick something that everybody will do. I instead focus on how can we make this trick that everybody will be inspired by, or everybody will be intrigued to make their own magic by, and the audience will enjoy all of those things. So, yeah, to answer the question much shorter, to me, releasing tricks has no longer become a important aspect in creating tricks for me.
Gorgeous. I want to ask you guys a question that you've probably been asked before, but I'm super curious on this as well. When you're approaching tricks for your own show, do you approach it from the storytelling specificity aspect first? Like, is it the Schrödinger's cat that comes to mind first, and then you find the trick to match that? Or does it usually come from the trick itself, and then you find the narrative around it? Or is it a bit of a balance between the two?
A bit of a balance for me between the two, because there's any number of things that can attract me to a trick. It could be the premise of the trick itself, like the plot, or it could be, you know, I just find the method really pleasing. I mean, I've got a thing in my show that uses a chemical to make a balloon pop. Without getting like too deep into methods on this, I don't know like what the intended audience is for this, but I really like that method. It's just super fun, and then the way it's incorporated into my show just pleases me every time. And so it's on, like, the audience enjoys it, but it's almost more for me than anything else. And it has absolutely nothing to do with the plot or anything else. I just in love with the method. And so it can be from anything. It's just like the bottom line is that it makes me happy.
Love that.
For me, I often say that I'm the magician I am because of all of the magicians that came before me. And so when I'm working on a new trick, it's not really coming from me. It's coming from my adventures in magic, from the books I've read, the performances, the magicians I've talked to. So I don't ever really approach a trick of, how can I make this me? Or how does this come from me? Actually, it comes from magic, and then I take it and put it through the little Gladwin processor in my brain, and then it kind of comes out. So there are very few tricks of mine that I could say, this is a wickedly original trick. Instead, I focus more on how can I make the best trick possible. Our mutual friend John Armstrong has a great quote, which is when someone says, like, how do you come up with your tricks? And he goes, well, it's real simple. I steal from dead guys. That's my show. That's an entire act.
Yeah, but I mean,
Absolutely.
like, it really does come down to there's almost nothing new under the sun. You're just repurposing things in different ways, and that's kind of what makes art in some sense. And so, like, to me, like, we've been having this conversation about what makes it you, and
Mm.
it's really just like you are sort of like the sum of everything you've put in, or that you've taken in and then just brought back out. What is the defining factor is how you've experienced, not experience, but the defining factor is how you approach the craft of putting it all together.
Yeah.
You know, the tricky part with this, though, is not becoming Eugene Berger for one trick, Michael Amar for another trick, Eric for another one. Like, it's that's not what I think any of us talk about. It's to put it all in the blender and process it up, and then see what's you out of that. And that's the hard part that I really struggled with for a long time.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the great things about like books coming back in the marketplace is you're having a lot of people like learn things from books. And so like the language that we use to describe the tricks is so much better these days because of the various authors that have like really worked hard to influence the current writers of magic. And it's being put out by companies like Vanishing and Penguin in a way that makes the book accessible in such a way that like it's cool to have the book, but you also want to go through it because we're doing a much better job at explaining what's inside the book and getting you excited about reading it. And then once you read it, it's very hard to be influenced by the performer's style or idiosyncrasies. Whereas like in the early 2000s, like how many of our friends were Jay Sankey clones or Michael Amar clones, because magic is for the bulk of when I've experienced it has been learned through imitation on video rather than a real learning process. And I think that some of the better teachers on video these days are really good at removing what made really dynamic teachers and entertaining teachers in the past create these mini clones, whether people realize it or not. I'm not saying it was a bad thing the way they learned. It's just that was sort of what happened. The same way that I can tell when someone is really early in their stand-up career because I can hear, I can like, oh, you are heavily influenced by Patton Oswalt or Lewis Black or Bill Burr or somebody like that.
John Mulaney voice.
Yeah, no, exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, you go back and listen to early stand-up of me, and I sound like a bad impression of Lewis Black because I wanted to be Lewis Black so bad. And it's the same with magicians who are early on. So learning to find what makes you distinct is difficult, but it takes having good friends and getting up and experiencing things and wanting to push forward.
That's so beautifully put. This is also making me curious. I know both of you have such physical sides to you because of magic and literal tactile with your hands. And then I know both of you have such a deep relationship with technology as well. So I'm going to ask a very specific question about this, but feel free to kind of take it in whatever direction you like. As we're talking about books, what do you guys think about this? A lot of people are talking about the resurgence of physical media right now, kind of in this digital age. And I'm so curious as to what each of you think of that from each of your own perspectives, because I can imagine you going at it a lot of different ways or seeing it a lot of different ways.
So Vanishing Inc. just released all of our books on ebooks, which means everyone gets to carry all of their books on an iPad. But you know what? Even though I've had access to that for 15 years now, because I laid out many of the books, I still much prefer the physical media. I much more enjoy sitting with a book in front of me, struggling with the fact that the page keeps closing or whatever, trying to do the move. But I think, I don't know, I just get some joy from that physical part of it. And that's, I think, will always stay the same for me.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with Andy. I mean, part of it is I've had a library since I was a kid, like whether it was, role-playing books or fiction or whatever. The house that I'm in right now, the whole reason I bought it was that there are floor-to-ceiling bookshelves on either side of the fireplace. Like when we walked in, I was like, we don't need to look anywhere else. This is fine. Just put in an offer. We'll be good.
That's incredible.
Yeah, I mean, I spend most of my days working for Penguin from my living room because it's a really easy way to access the the library right there. Like if I need to source something, it's a great way to do it. And I do really like that there is digital media that I can access when I'm on the road. But yeah, having that thing in your hand is very different.
Also, I met with my accountant.
Go ahead.
I met with my accountant yesterday, and she was going through like all my expenditure for the year, and she said that I have spent considerably less on books this year. Like, oh no, really? What did I do? What an error!
It's because you put them out. You didn't have to pay for them.
We just published way more books this year. That's why. Yeah, there we go.
That's it. And also, you're catching up. You're catching up on the ones you haven't read yet. That's fine. That's good. That's good.
There are many.
It's a good thing.
Okay. Thank you for your help. Thanks.
Always, we're happy to help. That's what we're here for.
Thank you.
What were you gonna say, Eric?
Well, but it's also that, like, I think that there's a new sort of generation of desktop publishing and making like books interesting and pretty and accessible that, I mean, like arguably it's caused an arms race between Penguin and Vanishing with like how pretty and how fancy the book can be. But it also, like, it is really nice to like look at a book that's beautifully laid out rather than, you know, and because it's more than just the information inside, it's the care with which you approach the material and how, like, our book guy Kevin Raylick, I could talk to him all day about, you know, paperweight and font choices and bindings and casings and all that stuff. And there's just so many things. And if you're into, like, I think magicians are naturally collectors. A lot of magicians are. So having something that is physically, like, aesthetically beautiful in front of you is really nice.
Yeah. I as a consumer, I'm definitely here for that arms race. I'm here for all the pretty books. I don't know if y'all remember, but do you remember the Egyptology or Dragonology books that came out like 15 years ago?
No.
There were these like big old books, and they just looked like a tome of ancient magic, and they're so fun. There's a stereotype that a lot of queer kids at the time had those books, and I had all of them, which was very exciting. So I'd love to, we've got a couple more minutes left, and I'd love to dive into, I want to ask y'all about dealers' rooms, and specifically, I want to ask kind of both as a creative producer of Mystify, selfishly want to ask this question, and just in general for anybody who is trying to set up a good dealer's room and wants to create an experience where you guys can both sell magic and also where you can create those connections with newer magicians, with folks in the industry. What are things that a convention can do to empower you guys to create the best experience for yourselves and for the people that come to your booth?
Wow. Eric, you're the expert at this.
I don't know. I mean, like, I think one of the things that was interesting going to Mystify versus having been in the booth at like Blackpool and Magi Fest and Magic Live is that the people who come to Mystify are very new to the dealer's room. And this isn't an indictment of them or an indictment of Mystify. It's just that so many of the people who come to these magic conventions on a regular basis and have for years sort of know that they can walk up and be like, hey, how does this work? Right? Like, what is the secret? Like, is it something I'm going to be able to do? And they're pretty bold and open with the questions because, I mean, I think Andi can relate to this. When we're selling magic online, we can't just go ahead and tell you what it is because we'll get crucified for exposure, right? So we kind of, as producers, we have to sort of paint this silhouette around what the trick is by telling you what it's not. And so, like, I've played with AI generators, like generative AI text things, trying to get them to write ad copy. And they're really not very good at it because there's an intuitive leap that they have to make that they just can't because they're good at generating averages. I mean, it's getting better at suggesting things as I use it for spell check, but it really can't from scratch do it. Whereas, and so that's just the nature of selling magic online. Whereas in the real world, you can touch it, taste it, feel it. Don't taste it because there's a lot of electronics now and lithium will explode. But you can literally walk up to somebody and say, like, this is how long I've been doing magic. This is what I'm into. Can I do this? And you can put it in their hands. And obviously not every trick am I going to show that to you because that's part of like the sale aspect of it. But I think that if we can find a way to make the dealer's room really accessible for people and educate the consumer on how to be an informed consumer, right? Like same way you would buy a DVD player. Well, you're not going to buy a DVD player. The same way you would buy a car is kind of the same way you should buy a magic trick when you're in the dealer's room. Like, don't be afraid to ask a question, because if they won't tell you the answer, that's fine. There may be a reason they're not going to tell you the answer to keep the secret in some way or another. But 99 times out of 100, like, I'm going to be like, oh yeah, this part is magnetic. Can you do this? Right? I'll put it in your hand. Can you lift this? Sure. Perfect example. I had a guy walk up. There's a great game called Fast and Loose. It's an old con game. It's played with a chain. Had a guy walk up, had a prosthetic arm. Now his prosthetic arm had movement, and he could control it, which to me was a different type of magic. But because of the sleights that Paul Vigil has put in here, it was a different way of doing this old school con game. And so I was able to put the chain in his hands, and we were able to see, like, can you do this? The answer is no, because of the way his hand operates. But he still wanted to play it, and we could talk through, like, well, if you get this, like, this is a good chain because it's nice and light, so it's not going to be like, it's not like a sterling silver chain that's going to be sort of heavy, and maybe you're now just dealing with the prosthetic and the additional weight. But here are other sources that you can go to learn different throws so you can still play the game. Because this is a guy who could play 3-card Monte with his left hand blindfolded and crush all day, but could he do the moves here? And you can't get that experience online, but he can absolutely have that experience in real life. So maybe, like, just reflecting on my experience at Mystify, like, if there were scheduled times in the dealer's room that I was going to do a dealer demo where I would perform the trick for you and then explain it at a very brief overhead, like a quick lecture, but then go, look, if you have more questions about this and you want to come by the booth to figure out, like, it's a feather flower trick. Are you allergic to the feather flowers? We can go ahead and, do a test right there. I think that's
rub it over.
Yeah. I mean, like, we'll get an EpiPen and we'll,
we're ready. Yes.
Yes. I mean, like, it's that kind of a thing. Cause I think what I experienced at Mystify in the dealer's room was some people who, like, not to, like, name names or anything, but, like, Ari had been to a lot of magic conventions. She walked right up and was like, tell me about this, tell me about this, tell me about this. And other people were like, I don't know what I can ask you. And it felt like, and I, with a few people, I was able to educate them, and we were able to have a really good dialogue. And some of them walked away with tricks that they were happy with. And some of them said, you know what, this isn't for me. I'm glad I asked. But most of the people didn't understand that they could just come out and say that.
Right. So, look, as a convention, kind of building the culture of you are allowed to ask questions and be bold enough to ask the questions, and also creating spaces, which I love, where there could be a mini lecture situation where you can help set that up for them too. I love that.
Yeah. I mean, it was a group that was not afraid to ask questions in the general sessions, like the lecture and the panels, but they were afraid to ask questions in the dealer's room, which was really interesting to me. Not a good thing or a bad thing, it just was different.
Yeah. Okay. Very cool. Thank you, Eric. Okay, Andy, what about you?
So I'll break the question down into two parts. You asked, what could conventions do to help make a better dealer's room? And the one thing I found is just not stick to the rules. When Vanishing Inc goes to a convention, we never start with, well, what are you giving us? Is it one table in front of us? Or we always say, what's the best experience we can create here? Which is why for years, when we had a dealer stand at Blackpool, we took over this whole kind of part of the dealer's room with this massive dealer stand so that people could come into us and feel like they were going into a magic shop. We do the same thing at Magic Live. So flexibility from the convention allows us to create a more bespoke experience to the convention. And for example, this year, without teasing too much at Magic Live, we have a totally different booth concept because of a product that we're releasing, and we're theming the whole booth. At least our initial idea is to theme the whole booth around this one product. So I think that's really fun for conventions to allow us to do that if the dealers are willing to put the time and the effort and budget into it. As to what can the consumer do to have a better dealer's experience, I have 2 points. One is, I think it's important to understand that the good magic shops, Penguin, Vanishing Inc, our goal is to create good magicians. It's not to create one sale. So it benefits us if magicians get better and better and people stay in magic longer, right? So if we're going to make this purely a consumer conversation, that is a better thing for us. Instead of selling one bad product that you never come back to us, it's great if we can sell you a product that's suited to you, and then you're going to want to come back more and more. So that's the kind of gross consumer aspect of it. And the reason I point that out is because I want to back up what Erik said. Like, ask as many questions as you want, because it's more important to us that you find the right trick than it is for us to make the most money from a sale. So you are never taking up too much time if you have 100 questions or you want to try something, hold a prop or whatever. I think that's really important. And I invite everybody to do that. I think it's really important. And the other thing is, go on.
So I think building on what Andy said there is that I trust a magic shop more if you walk in and you ask questions, the guy's like, oh, this isn't for you. Like I've had conversations in Vanishing's booth before I was a dealer, where I asked serious questions and they said, oh yeah, no, you would never use this. And they sort of like turned me away. And I ended up buying something different. And I've had the same experiences with people where they're like, man, this thing's really cool. And I'm like, yeah, but it's, you're 12 and this is $400. Like, you're not going to do this.
Right, right.
I don't want to have the experience. Why don't you look at this? I think this is more fun for you. So if someone says no to you in the dealer's room, they're probably a more trustworthy person.
Yeah.
It's like the friend who's brutally honest with you.
I have many of those, apparently. I'm just finding out now. I'm reflecting on this. The other thing I realized about a dealer's booth is it's a great big dopamine hit. Like when I see a trick, like when at Blackpool, Erik showed me a trick and I had the feeling of being fooled and entertained and intrigued by this trick. And I now want to create that dopamine hit for other people. So I want to rush to buy that trick. And it's just this big loop. So what I encourage people to do is actually research the tricks that they might want to see at a dealer's booth ahead of time so that you don't get wrapped up in that dopamine hit. So something that Vanishing Inc. has started doing, and I invite Penguin to use the same idea, is we email people ahead of time, maybe you already do, to say these are some of the things that we'll have at our dealer's booth this year at insert convention here. And then that way people can come even a little bit more educated than just turning up at the booth and buying the first trick they see or book they see. And that's proved to be really useful for us to make sure we're having the right conversations with the right people to help them find what they want.
That research is also something that can make you more engaged with the community. So like before Blackpool happens, because it's such a British-centric convention, I'll go on 4 or 5 different YouTube shows, podcasts, and talk to the hosts about what we're bringing, what we're excited about, all that stuff. And and a lot of the dealers do the same thing. And what that can end up doing for you is you can end up finding different review shows, different performers, different hosts, different like magic pundits, for lack of a better term, that will make you a more informed consumer, but also introduce you to parts of the magic community you would never have experienced before.
Gorgeous. I love these answers. Thank you guys both so much, truly. Okay, we're about at time for this podcast. Thank you guys both so much for being here. I have one last question for each of you. So since this is the variety pack, I want to ask what kind of snack you would be. And I'll start. Today, I think I would be like a cheesy, kind of crunchy snack that like maybe has some sort of puffed element, like those big fluffy Cheetos. Erik, what about you?
I would be leftover lamb sog.
Yes.
I'd be like a bar of chocolate that's all gooey on the inside.
Yes,
is that
Andy.
weird? I was trying to be cute.
That's not weird at all. It was so cute.
Okay. I wanted cute.
Not
I was
weird.
aiming for cute, but I went weird. I didn't mean to go weird.
No. Cute was achieved.
Okay.
It can confirm.
Okay.
Can
Yes.
confirm.
Thank
Your
you.
2 cute friends think that this was cute.
Okay,
Amazing.
good. Like a gusher or something like that. You bite into it, it's gooey. Oh, there we go. That's better.
I see you. Gushers are great too. It's perfect. I also love the lamb sog as this is a snack. It's a real snack. I love
It's
it.
also lunchtime here. I might be hungry and just.
Oh, you're so ready. Absolutely. Okay, well, in that case, I'm going to let you beautiful people go. Thank you so much for being on the Variety Pack, and have a wonderful day.
You too. Thanks.
It's been so much fun. Thank you.
You can learn more about Erik Tait at eriktait.com. That's ERIKTAIT.com. And you can learn more about Andi Gladwin at illusionist.co.uk. The Variety Pack Podcast. Made possible by Mystify Magic Festival.